thing right away is pronouns.
I'm Remy. My pronouns are she, they.
I'm Chris, and I use he, him.
Hi, my name is Kira, and my pronouns is she.
Well, my name is Sam, and my favorite pronoun is Sam. It's short, it's simple, it's the best pronoun. But if you can't do Sam, then they and them works just fine. And if that's too hard, then you can use any of the other pronouns. But really, my favorite pronoun is Sam.
Love the gender neutral name. What is it? How did you decide on Sam?
It was very spur of the moment. Very spur of the moment. I had a place that I stopped regularly to get sandwiches. Went through the what do you want, sir? What, ma'am? And I was like, oh, fuck. So I just, sort of said whatever I wanted, and they were like, okay, name on the ticket. And I was like, Sam. And that was it. I have not been one of the out and proud people, always with a flag or a standard out there. But I've never been closeted either. I mean, I've never pretended that I was something that I was not.
How would you describe your identity?
Well, certainly I would use fluid, but I think trickster is actually a pretty good word to describe. A trickster is a character in many cultures who is never in one place only. And that too has been a years long sort of process of like being born and identified as female has meant that many times in my life there's been a very awkward moment or a startling moment or explosive moment where it's like, oh, you're not what I thought you were. And that's the curious piece about being as fluid as I am, is people really can take me as they choose to. That characteristic, when you can move from one place in the hierarchy to another, really allows you to analyze that hierarchy and to understand it, but it also allows you to be an advocate, to speak truth in places that you wouldn't be able to speak otherwise. In human life, I think there are about 4 questions we all want to answer. One of those questions is, who am I? One is, what's the meaning of my life? Another is, what do other people owe me? And what do I owe other people? Because that's a question of sort of that eternal balance in our own species, right? Like, how much should I eat and take over from other people? And how much energy should I use? And all that kind of stuff. But also, how much justice do I get to ask from the world? Like, what do other people really owe me in terms of space for freedom and things like that? But what I really want, everybody to really know is that we spend our entire lives with those questions. I think what we have a chance at doing as tricksters and as queer people is asking those really foundational questions about what it means to be human, right? What it is to live on the margins. And I think that's where we have a natural alliance with people who live in poverty. So they started Faithful Fools, and the very first thing they did was to begin a regular practice of being on the streets and treating the streets as a kind of retreat center, as a place to really identify what compels me to do this work, what are the risks of doing this work, where do I see my common humanity with other people, where am I separated from other people? And then doing that on a regular basis meant that engaging with the social justice issues around them, whether it was with youth or around race or poverty, it came from the street level up. If something's happening at midnight, it's about our lives too. It's not just the people that are on the streets. When there is chaos on the streets, it's about us. When there's calm on the streets, it's about us. So Faithful Fools is a really engaged community, and then we build relationships with people far and wide and near and close. What we do on a day in, day out basis is always an excuse for making relationships and creating community. Everything else is a tool or the form that gets us there. Our basic mission is to live that life of presence, seeking to meet people where they are, and discovering on the streets our common humanity. For 3 years before the pandemic, we had a woman living in front of our building. Her name was Jackie Williams. We also got to know another neighbor of ours, George Bracy, has experienced all the shit the world has to offer Black trans women. And there is a lot that George has experienced in the world that I have no clue about, but I do know that George has lived through a great deal.
Sam has placed a lot of value in redefining how we view our activism, making sure that we are not doing it out of pity or charity, but more so for the common well-being of all humanity. From this, Sam has found an intersection between art and activism by cataloging the nightlife and celebration of the queer community.
One of the reasons that I love spending time in drag bars, especially in the Midwest, is just this sheer exuberance of like, fuck the rest of the world. I'm here just to dance and lip sync and, be wild and crazy kind of stuff. And it really didn't matter in many ways, who was working class and who had a lot of money and who was Black and who was Latino and, all of those kinds of things, because just the very fact of putting on a wig or a mustache or, alternate clothing was just the act of defiance and the joy of it.
Yeah, for me, having language on like gender and sexuality has been really amazing because like you kind of grow up thinking like, oh, I'm feeling this way, but there's no word for it. There must be something wrong. And then when you have a word for it, you can have that community and you can find other people, that are like you or different than you that can teach you different things. And suddenly, you don't feel like you're wrong anymore.
I mean, I think, and who knows, this may be changing because of the degree to which queer people are so much more accepted and there's more and more language and, all of those kinds of things. But I do feel like having lived at the margins of the world where there wasn't language, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, there was really only the sense of like male and female, boy and girl, and those things were tightly aligned. And there were right ways and wrong ways to do that, to do gender. And it was pretty tightly and clearly described. There weren't very many places in the world, I don't think, that at least that I was aware of at that time, that had any language at all for something different. The only sort of hinted at shadowy things were the idea of being a gay man or being a lesbian. And maybe I told you this before, but my mother's take on it was gay people aren't evil or bad or criminal, but they're just always unhappy. But the idea that there might be people who, or all of us might have different gender experiences, and we might have different gender experiences over the course of our lives, those were not ideas that were available. So to be different was to be way outside the norm. And so I think that's where, queer identity often gives us an insight into the margins, into what else is possible. But I don't know if that's going to go away as we get more and more ingrained in the mainstream, as it becomes easier and easier, as, we have parents who say, I understand you want to be called they, and now I'm changing my language, or, I gave you a gender neutral name so you would be able to choose, that as that changes, fewer and fewer people will come into conflict with, this rigid wall, the boundaries. And I think in some ways boundaries are useful for human beings because it requires a certain amount of courage to cross them, and it is disorienting to cross boundaries. And that's what Trickster teaches us about. And then ultimately that question of who am I and what's the meaning of my life, it